So I am here once again with a gentleman who may have been on Genuine Chit-Chat more times than anyone, who isn't explicitly part of like a mini-series. This is his 8th appearance. It'll be the 9th episode release, because one of the conversations we had was like 2 hours, so I split that in 2. But so for the 6 odd years I've been podcasting, you've been on at least once a year. But considering how many appearances on Genuine Chit-Chat you've made, it's not even close to the amount of content you're actually releasing, because I'm speaking with Gough of Beernuts Productions, and because we're here to talk about his newest film, which is, to my knowledge, the 29th film that you've released. In addition to that, there's an even longer behind-the-scenes series that you've put on YouTube, and then on top of all that jazz, there's also, you know, the audiobooks you've put out, and all the other bonus stuff on Beernuts Productions. So lots and lots of content. 8th time coming on the show. 2024, we're recording right at the start, and this episode, I'm going to release this within 2 hours of us talking. So it's my one next week and the week after. I've got several recordings due, but this one I was like, I'll just record it, get it straight out. But Gough, how are you doing in 2024?
Yes, well, thank you for the kind intro, and I didn't realise I was such a popular guest, so that's terrific. But yes, 2024 is going well, and I like now as well. You and I seem to have a January thing going on, which I quite like. So yeah, no, it's all very good, and you're quite right. We did quite a bit of work last year. We did Mr. Eligible at the sort of midpoint of last year, and then I spent about the best part of 4 months pumping out a little mini series, I guess you would call it, and also another film. So yes. I have been a busy lad. There is no doubt about it. But I like being busy. It's my thing. I've got too much energy, I think. But yeah, but all good, Mike.
Yeah, it's one of those. I think like January is always like new year of Genuine Chit-Chat. Gotta have Gough on. You know, you're always within the first 3 episodes every time, and I always get messages from people. But have you got Gough lined up for January? I said yes. And yeah, Gough will be coming and saying hi, and people love that because you've been on the show so many times. You know, I don't need to constantly reintroduce you all the time. It's more like, what's Gough up to this time? But because your output was so massive last year, you know, I missed Mr. Eligible, which is completely fine because you reached out to me and I was like, I'm just so busy at the moment. I'll have you on later or the start of the year. And then it was like, well, actually, I've got another film coming out already. I was like, I've basically just leapfrogged over one of the films. But seeing all the behind-the-scenes stuff was really interesting. But before we delve into the behind-the-scenes stuff, the film itself is Reluctant Heroes, Horse Race Commentators, which is not the first place I'd go for comedy. It may not even be the 29th place I go for comedy, to be honest. So why did you choose Horse Race Commentators? Is it something, have you been to many race tracks? Do you enjoy it and you're poking fun of something you enjoy? Or is it the opposite? You just think it's a bit silly and that's why you made a film?
Yes. Hard yes on the second one.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel that horse racing is something that needs to be mocked because it seems a little ridiculous, in my humble opinion. I'm not against horse racing, but what I think is until I actually hear a horse say to me, I really enjoy running around a track and being whipped, then, I'm sort of on the fence on it, to be honest. So, just the amount of money and the amount of outrageous behaviour that goes on with horse racing, I just felt it deserved to be mocked. And so I thought, well, who really has the ability? Like, I mean, where's a place that sort of oversees horse racing and, you know, is easiest to mock? Because I could have chosen the trainers or the owners or the breeders or the jockeys. But I thought, well, the horse race commentators, they kind of overlook the races and everybody sort of knows that voice of, you know, coming around the corner is number 3, followed by number 4. Everybody knows that voice. So I thought that'll be the place to go, I think. And let's be honest, they're all very much reluctant heroes. I could have chosen nurses or school teachers or any other firefighters, but I thought that horse race commentators were definitely heroes of our community that needed a light shone upon them, shall we say?
I was going to ask about the reluctant heroes part. Like, what is this subtly going to be a new series, or is it just kind of like you needed something to call the film that wasn't just horse race commentators are silly? Like, what was the reluctant heroes part about?
Well, every time I've done like a mockumentary, I've tried to give it a very serious name. So I think I had with the environment one, it was like the environment, the real truth. And then with the one about sex workers, it was prostitution, the untold story, I think was that one. So it's all, I always try and give a very serious title to the profession that I'm making fun of.
I mean, that's a fair enough reason. I mean, it's something I'd not really thought about. I mean, I can't say I've been to any horse races. I've seen it on TV and stuff. Like when I was younger, my parents used to. There's one, the Grand National, I think it is. They used to like bet a little bit of money on that, and then they would say to me, "Oh, choose a horse, just a name that you like the sound of." And so I want to ask you about some of the names here, because I've written my question here. My prompt is: how much fun did Gough have naming horses? Because I just thought it was a way for you just to get out all the silly, funny names that you could think of. And then I started noting down some of the character names, and I've got the commentator called Barry Apex and the school teacher called Jack Fraudulence, which both sound like characters out of maybe like the Expendables or something. But like, did you have quite a lot of fun naming the horses and the characters? And was this really a way just to, as an excuse to say all those things?
Well, I'm not too sure. The English humour and the Australian humour is reasonably similar in its slang. So the second bout of horse names that you hear, I'm not too sure if you picked up on, but they're all Australian vulgar slang terms for a lady's naughty bits. Is that something that you picked up on, perhaps?
I noticed at least two of them were, and I think there may have been one or two others either I didn't hear properly or it didn't really register, but I was like, at least a couple of these sound like, you know, going down to Beaver Town in a way. So I did kind of get that gist.
Yeah. So when I with the second round, because there's two horse races you heard being called, and with the second one, it was, and the reason why, there was a reason. So besides me thinking that it was very funny, the first horse race, it was actually harder than what you would think to come up with outrageous names for horses, because I'd write them down. Yeah, that's great. And then when I would edit the script, I'm like, yeah, I don't really like that one so much. So I'd have to change it. And then I'd come back again and I'd change it again. And I thought, oh, this is harder than I thought. So then I thought, well, I'll get a theme. So the next time I'll do a race, I'll have a theme. And so I chose the theme of dirty slang terms for a lady's naughty parts. So that was essentially the theme for the second round of horse races. The first one was just, essentially things that sound ridiculous and silly. But they're all, there's a few other slang terms and stuff within them as well that some people will recognize and some won't, but that's okay. They all sound silly, which is kind of the point. With the character names, I like to have silly names, but I also think it's important that they kind of represent the person. So the commentator is the world's greatest horse race commentator, hence Apex. He's the best. And then Jack Fraudulence, he is a complete criminal, hence the word fraudulence. So I like, and just some of the other names of people that are referenced are, again, as you point out, just very silly names. And I like using silly names wherever possible. So, yes, it's just a good excuse to be silly, really.
Perfect. Why not? Where else but a Beernuts Productions project? That's exactly where you want to put all your silly into. And there's one part that I recall from the behind the scenes thing on YouTube, which I'll put links to in the description, because I really recommend people check that out. Obviously, go to beernutsproductions.com for your comedy needs. But on YouTube, you can like check out all of the sort of lots of bonus content, so quite a few fun things. And I really love the behind the scenes stuff. Like, I know I'm amidst the swath of people that have been saying to you about doing a pseudo sequel to I'll Not Go Quietly or something along those lines. And I know you mentioned in the behind the scenes stuff, it was like, yeah, this is kind of like you hint at that kind of idea. And in that, you actually mentioned at one point that you weren't happy with your own performance as an actor, which is interesting because I've heard you be critical of other individuals, not naming them or anything because you're professional, but saying, oh yeah, there was a person I had, they were shit and they were really difficult, so I binned them off and got someone good. And it's like, fair enough, power to you. But with yourself, I don't think I've really heard you, like, you do a lot of self-deprecating humor as part of who you are, which I appreciate as a Brit because we do that quite a lot as well. But actually being not self-deprecating in a humour sense, you were just saying, like, you were saying certain lines and didn't feel like it was working, and you were actually quite honest about how, as you're the leader of the whole project, you really have to be the one to kind of, you have to know everything that you're doing for other people to really follow in that regard. So what if you could tell me a little bit about that, just because I've not actually seen that side of you, to be honest with you.
Well, to put it in context, I think that was about 3 weeks before we shot. So it's not like we were on set and I'm going, I'm doing a shithouse job. I recognised about 3 weeks out that my lines weren't coming down. It was really as simple as that. I wasn't learning my lines as easily as I usually can, and it wasn't sounding as good as what it was. Nothing to do with the script. It was just all, it was a me problem. So it just meant that I had to put a bit more work in. It really is as simple as that. I recognised that it wasn't sounding good and the lines weren't flowing like they should. So I need to put a couple of days aside and just really focus on making sure that my lines are down, because I've got a lot with the horse race film. I had a lot of lines that I had to learn. So it was more just about, recognizing the fact that it wasn't sounding as good as it should. And I need to put a couple of days aside, which I did. Oh, pardon me, I just burped as well. That's very professional. But I just realised I had to put a couple of days aside to focus on that, which I did, and then I got it together, and no dramas. So, I mean, you can hear in yourself when I do believe that when you're an actor, and I rehearse my lines out loud so that I can hear them. So when you're saying them out loud, you can hear whether it sounds good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, you've got ears, you've got the capability of understanding what sounds good. So, yeah, it was just I was listening back to it and it just wasn't sounding right. It's really as simple as that, yeah.
And you record yourself, like, reading out the lines? Because I think, did you say you read it out to yourself, the entire script as well? And do you record that?
Yeah. Yes, yeah. So I do a few different things. Depending on what the role is and what I think is required, I can videotape. What am I, 110? I record it down on my phone is what I do, and I just listen to it back and make sure it's sounding good. I read it. I'll listen to it off the computer as well because my computer speaks to me. So I'll listen to it off the computer because that helps learn the lines as well for some strange reason. And I can read it. So there's a few different ways I go about it. So it's whatever is going to work for that particular project is what I'll do, depending on how big the role is and what's required.
Yeah, and I want to ask as well, like, this project yourself, like, again, the behind the scenes videos are really great. Just check those out, even if someone hasn't heard of Beernuts or anything like that before. Check out the behind the scenes videos because they're really interesting and they are quite funny as well. But in that, something that surprised me as well is, in the lead up, you said, there are issues, as you always expect there are. You hire X amount of actors and a percentage of them are going to bail or mess you around or whatever, which is just being a good planner and things, especially with 29 movies or 28 movies at that point under your belt. But you actually said you and Ash both agreed, you kind of checked with other people as well. Like, was this probably the best filming of a project that you've actually done, like on the production days themselves? Because everyone, mainly you, seemed so surprised that it was so flawless in so many ways. There was no drama, there were no delays, you finished early. Why was this the smoothest Beernuts production to date?
Probably, yes. I'm just trying to think. Like, I mean, I'm very organised, so they always get done how they need to get done and how they should get done. But yeah, the fact that we finished early both days was good. I mean, the weather was on our side, which is unusual. None of the actors dicked us around, so that was nice. I mean, as you saw, there were problems I had with a few actors who did get sacked. So that was a thing. So, but I recognised that they were going to be an issue, so I got rid of them before time. so that wouldn't be a problem that I would have to face. So yeah, it was just a case of it all went very smoothly, which was fantastic. Yeah, I think it probably was the smoothest shoot that I've ever done, which is very good. It's always good to have a nice, easy shoot.
And how was it like? Because we didn't speak about Mr. Eligible. Like, how was that filming wise? Like, was that just kind of the average Beernuts film, or was that closer to Reluctant Heroes? Like, was there? I don't know if there's like a trend if the movies are generally getting easier, or if it's literally just
No. With Mr. Eligible, we had a couple of problems. That was one of the reasons why I decided to make a behind the scenes one was because of some of the issues that I faced. I'm like, people need to see what I go through. Because
Surly Pete mentioned a couple, didn't he? Sorry to interject, but Surly Pete, I recall before he had to go to New Zealand, he said that in Mr. Eligible there were lots of problems that came about.
Yeah, so one of them was he had all the props in his car, and then his car broke down, as in the lock on his door broke, so he couldn't get into his car. And so we had to call our locksmith to get the props and his car open. Wow. So that was a problem. That sounds minor, but props are kind of important. And he was parked half an hour away from where we were filming. Also, one of the actors was 2 hours late in arriving and came with the most horseshit reason you could ever imagine for being 2 hours late. It just simply did not make sense. I had an actor pull out of the project less than 24 hours before the project happened. And another actor had to come in, learn their lines within about 12 hours, which they did and did an incredible job, and learn their lines within about 12 hours. So it was, and we had, not that it mattered so much, but we had a lot of rain as well, but it was mostly filmed indoors, so it really didn't matter. But it was. Oh, and we ended up running. That one did run over. It's the only project I've ever done that's run late, and it ran like an hour over time. And again, Scott, as he mentioned in this film, he had some medical problems as well, which he was dealing with. So we would have to stop on occasion so he could deal with those medical issues. You know, the woman 2 hours late made us run late. There was just, oh my gosh, it was a very stressful show. Like the project came out fantastic. So don't be everybody sitting at home going, well, I'm not watching that. It came out really, really well. So, I mean, I could have rushed through it and done things, but I make sure that the projects that I make are of the highest quality. So, I made sure that I wasn't going to stop until I got the takes that I wanted, which is why we ran an hour over time. But and I got to give credit to the venue, because the venue didn't cause me too many issues, because we were supposed to finish at 9 p.m. We finished at 10 p.m. and they didn't give us any grief. They're really, really cool. I've used them a few times before. So thumbs up to Palmer Golf. They are awesome, because it was actually the same room that we filmed the wedding in, and it was actually the same room again that we filmed the school classroom in for Horse Race Commentators. So that school classroom is the same room that we did the wedding film in. You're just obviously dressed very differently. So, credit to Palmer Golf for not giving me any grief. But the guy there, I think I mentioned in my behind-the-scenes documentary, the guy who runs it is a very relaxed human being and very chilled out. And sometimes it kind of freaks me out because he's just too relaxed. He's just too, yeah, man, all good. I'm like, oh, shit, really? Like, can't you, like, either pretend to be enthusiastic or just, like, grill me on something just to know that where you're in? I mean, like, yeah, but all good. So, Mr. Eligible came out fantastic, but there was a huge amount of onset, I don't want to say, well, problems is makes it sound bad. Everything was fixed. There was no problems in the end, but just issues, speed bumps, shall we call them. There was a whole bunch of speed bumps with Mr. Eligible in the filming. So that was one of the motivations behind making the behind-the-scenes documentary that I did. So, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, it's quite ironic, isn't it? You have a bit of a troubled shoot And so you're like, okay, next time we have a shoot, we have to record this because some of this, tumultuous things that are going on with me might be quite entertaining. And then you go to record and it's like, this is the smoothest shoot I've ever had. And it's just like sod's law. Yeah, there's almost the one time you're actually kind of, in some ways, would be okay with an issue occurring. And it's like, no, pretty smooth. One or two actor issues, which is to be expected. And that's it. And it's like, oh, well, good.
We did have a major location problem too, if you recall. So, and also Pete having to leave wasn't ideal either. So there were issues that needed to be overcame within the pre-production phase. So if people do want to witness a little bit of drama, there is some that pokes around in a couple of the episodes when we had to change a major location and all that sort of stuff. And also certainly Pete having to leave halfway through wasn't ideal. But yeah, the people can see how these things are overcome, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it's always something that I think with indie filmmakers especially, it's something I myself find very interesting, is because, if you're a big budget, they're obviously, regardless of the size of the production you're making, there's going to be problems somewhere. Whether it's some sort of corporate head at the top of this giant business who doesn't know what on earth they're talking about with movies, try and critique things, and then it ruins the movie and they blame you. That's a whole nother big thing. But when it comes to when I hear certain directors speaking about certain shoots, people like Tarantino or other individuals who are like, oh yeah, in the early days, before I had everyone knowing my name, when I was making these films, this scene that people say is really iconic and amazing, that only happened because I had a different scene planned, but things fell through and I had to make do and change XYZ about it. So I often find that finding out what happens behind the scenes of indie filmmaking, both it adds a layer of, respect to the people involved because it's so tired, like every pound, or in your case, a dollar really does count. But also just, there are in some ways there's more stakes because, you haven't got this big giant studio behind you who can just throw money at a problem. It's like, these are problems I have to solve myself. And where you're the main actor, director, writer, and Beernuts is your company, all of that weight falls on you as well.
Yes, it does. That's the end of that. But yes, you are quite right.
I was going to ask, did you, with the behind the scenes stuff, I really enjoyed those. And I had an idea, actually, which you don't have to follow through. And you can just say, that sounds great, Mike, and then never do it. But there's Patreon, which is a thing which exists, where people can give a small amount of money to a company, an individual, whatever. I've got that. I've got a few people throwing me a few shekels for additional content. And I think for Beernuts, an option, they're doing a pitch to you for your own company. If you did something like that, but you just put the behind the scenes videos on there, because I personally, even if you didn't edit, because they're edited very well, and you put a lot of effort into those, so I assume it was as a huge uptake as well as trying to produce a comedy film as well. But even just those random videos, I would pay money just for every few weeks or even couple of months just to have you talking at your phone, complaining about stuff. One of the things I find funniest, this is really bad, but the thing, I know you've got your podcast as well, which I have been listening to as well. I listened to that after your last recommendation, Fiona Patton, the MP who used to be a sex worker and things. Really interesting conversation. Love that. So I'll put a link to that in the description too. But my favourite things is when you get rejections from people and you don't say who it's from or anything, but you just slate the reasoning. They're just like, yeah, they rejected it after reading the script. It's just some bullshit reason. They're not giving me the real truth. They should have just said I'm not interested and left rather than give me this chapter and verse of rubbish. And I just find the bluntness of you in those moments are so funny. And I would just pay to see those as much as I enjoy the Beernuts films themselves, and obviously people go out and pay for those. But I would pay just to have you complaining behind the scenes because it just cracks me up.
Well, yes, I do. So if people go onto the Beernuts Productions website, beernutsproductions.com, early plug, they will find there is a donation button at the bottom of the website, so they can, donate a few extra dollars if they want to, which will obviously help in making more content. And also, when they do download Reluctant Heroes Horse Race Commentators, they get the documentary as a added free bonus. Or you can, as you point out, watch it on YouTube as well. So there's a few places that they can watch that. But if they download the actual film themselves, they get that as a bonus content situation. But yes, in regards to, I just find it hilarious when people lie when it's not really required. Like, it's like if someone says to you, hey, Mike, do you want to come to the pub on Saturday night? And you make up this grand excuse why you can't. Well, the real reason is you're tired. It's been a big week, and you just honestly can't be bothered. It's nothing against them personally. You just prefer to sit at home with your delightful girlfriend and watch is it fiance now?
It is fiance now. Yes, good memory there. Yes. Amazing stuff. We haven't spoken in a year, so actually the last time we spoke, she was my girlfriend. So good memory there. Nice.
No, I follow you on social media, and you did the customary post that you need to do as an engaged young man.
Megan wanted me to as well. I wasn't going to. And she was like, well, I can't do it if you don't. So I was like, yeah, to be fair, it is a celebration of us, isn't it? And I did propose to you. So I guess I should not just seem like I don't care. Like my social media gap, if I just had, podcast, gap. Podcast, it's been like, okay, maybe. Is he really that happy about his own engagement? So yeah, that's fine.
But yes, you're at home with your delightful fiance, and you really don't want to go to the pub. But instead of just saying the truth, which is, you know what, I just want to spend the night with my fiance, watching a DVD and going to bed at like an old lady's time because I'm cooked. You make up some elaborate excuse of, my I don't know, my pet dog has to have its liver removed and another one placed in due to the fact it ate chocolate. It's like, well, I mean, we'll find out eventually that that's horse shit. You know what I mean? Like, just be honest, man. You don't want to be in my movie? Just say, I don't want to be in your movie. You don't want me to use your location? Just say, buddy, I don't want you filming here. Like, it's okay. I will move on with my life. It's totally fine. There's no need. Like, because I've been doing this, as you point out, I've been doing this a long time. I've heard excuses and reasons that would blow your mind as to why I can't do or why people won't do things. It's just moronic. I think I mentioned in the behind-the-scenes documentary, I had one actress, this was for Mr. Eligible, one actress tell me that they couldn't audition for the film because they were allergic to water and the scene required them to be like washing their hair in the shower, and she couldn't do it because she was allergic to water. Now, I'm no doctor, but I think that if you are allergic to water, being as the body is 97% water, you would die because you would be allergic to yourself. But that's just me. And also, how do you wash? I mean, you need to drink water to survive. I mean, it's just...
Well, how do you act? Like, how could you even put yourself forward being an actor and try and say, right, in my contract, you have to put it, no water anywhere near me ever. I'm like, do you live in this world?
It's just moronic. It's just completely moronic. Now, what I did then, because I knew she was lying, so I was like, whatever. I just say, fine, whatever. But I was like, I have to learn more about this nutbag. So I went on to her Instagram page and found out that she's very Jesus-y. Now, I'm not against people who are into Jesus, but it kind of explains why she didn't want to do my film, because she doesn't have the sort of sense of humor that I have. So why not just say, I don't really enjoy the content, so I don't want to audition? Why make up some bull? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It just it blows my mind. So, but yeah, that's a very long-winded answer to your question. But yes,
that's what I want. It's it. That's it. Well, I'm petitioning for the next YouTube doco thing that you make is for you to just read out rejections and the most bizarre, like top 5 best rejections for Beernuts. It can be actors or locations or anything. Obviously, don't say the person's name or anything. But it would be. I would love that. That would crack me up. To be honest with you. And speaking of the production on this one, I want to say, judging, I'm pretty certain that I saw Ash appear in some other behind-the-scenes videos before, so I think she's been working for you for a little while, or working with you for a little while. But I feel like she was like a star of the behind-the-scenes video, because in everything you were doing, no matter what your mood was, she was in living it up. She was just happy and ready for anything, and she did a great job being an actor in the production as well. And I just feel like, applause for Ash, because I just think that she did such a good job, and she seems so happy, even in the days where you were a bit like, yeah, doing this, everything's a bit like this, but we're pushing through. And Ash is like, thumbs up, peace sign, I'm all good. And like any joke you throw away, bouncing it right back to you. So I loved that dynamic. I just wanted to mention that I thought Ash was fantastic.
She is cool to work with, there's no doubt. And you're right. I think this is probably the 4th maybe project that Ash has been involved in some way, because I first met her as an actor. So she did a voiceover. So the first time I worked with Ash was I think she was the English teacher voiceover in the education system. She was supposed to be in the film, but she got COVID, so she couldn't come on the filming day, so I had to replace her. But what I ended up doing, I did a switcheroo. So the person that was actually going to do, because she only had a couple of lines as an actor, as an on-screen actor, so the person that was going to do the voiceover, I said, well, can you do that role? And I said to Ash, well, being as you can't film on this day, can you come in next week and do the voiceover? And I'll just switch you two actors around because you're pretty much the same in regards to age and all that sort of stuff. So it'll work. And so that's how I first met Ash, was for the education system. And then, yeah, she's been, I think she's been a part of every film since. So that would be, I reckon, the last 5 films. So that's the last 18 months or so. She's been by my side. Lucky for her.
And also you got Aaron stepping in as well, who was, I recognise as well being a previous actor of Beernuts. You're just going around scooping up all these actors, and you could be a production assistant, you could do a bit of this, you could do a bit of that. But what cracked me up, I rewatched it again today just because the scene made me laugh so much, which was when you say to him, "What's it like being a production assistant from an actor?" And you thought he was going to be like, "Oh, you shit Gough, and you're a bit of a dick." And then he was just like, "Oh, it's really great, it really touched me, it's really been this, I just know this is where I'm meant to be." And you're like, Jesus Christ, where did that all come from? This is a really heartfelt response. And you were just in that one time I've ever seen you having no idea how to respond to a situation because you're so used to people giving you shit or excuses or whatever like that. And when someone's like, "No, Gough, you really did help me out here," you're like, where's the dick joke here? What do I do?
Yes, yeah, pretty much. That was that took me by surprise. He's a lovely fellow, Aaron, and he hadn't done any production assistant work before, but when Surly Pete had to go back to New Zealand, I was like, oh shit, who am I going to get? And the few production people that I know were already booked on other stuff. So I was going through the actors and whatnot. And I'm like, well, Aaron, he's a great guy, Aaron, as in he'll, if I need him to do something, he doesn't argue or question. He'll just go in there and give it his best effort, no matter what. He's very trustworthy. He's very reliable. So I was like, well, I'll put it to him and see if he wants to do it. And he said, yep, sure, we'll do it. And then, he ended up really enjoying it. So on my next project that I'm filming, he again is going to be a production assistant because Pete's still over in New Zealand, I think will be permanently now, unfortunately. So yeah, Aaron sort of has taken Pete's job permanently now, it would seem. But he did a wonderful job, so it would be silly not to hire him again. But so more power to Aaron. And yes, he was being very sincere, which I was definitely not expecting. So it was very nice of him to say what he said. So no doubt.
What is it with the behind the scenes things? First of all, did you enjoy making it? I know you've done sort of behind the scenes stuff before in prior Beernuts things, but this was, I think, the biggest behind the scenes project. It was basically a documentary. You just split it up on YouTube. How did you find it was making that behind the scenes video series? Was there something you were trying to specifically achieve from it, or was it just put the camera on and go see?
Yeah, well, so you are quite right. Originally, the plan was to do a 90-minute film and release it as its own sort of film. But then I realised about halfway through that there's going to be too much footage because it ends up going just a little over 2 hours. And I also thought if it would be too much of heavy watching to watch all 90 minutes of that in one go. So I thought if I split it up into 5 half an hour episodes, it is 5, isn't it? Yeah, I'm sure it's 5. Is it 5? Yeah, 5. 5 half an hour episodes, then that would be a far more digestible way to view it. And it would be a far more entertaining way to view it. And I knew from the start as well what I wanted in regards to how I wanted it to look and feel. So I wanted, as you point out, a bit of a sequel to I Will Not Go Quietly, which is why I get a few other people that are not involved in the film involved. And then you see a bit of me sort of not doing film stuff, like doing other things as well. For that reason as well. So I wanted it to be a little bit of everything. And yes, I also was like, well, we'll just do it. So we'll just use my phone and I'll just film whenever I deem it to be appropriate. and then I just labeled all the clips, and then a couple of days after the film shoot, and we'd edited the Reluctant Heroes Horse Race Commentators, I went back into the studio with Scott, and we put all the clips down. So I didn't actually watch the clips back, sort of thing, until, well, I mean, I would, after I filmed them, I'd watch them to make sure they came out, but then I'd label them and put them to one side and didn't touch them again until the time it was to edit. And I thought, well, we'll just see what happens. And that's what happened. So, yes.
Amazing. How was it like speaking with a lot of individuals? There were certain other podcasters, not me, but there were other podcasters and news people to a degree. You cut, there was a few news clips that were cut in, but a lot of them were individuals that you know from your general life. You know, there was that friend of yours that you've known since you were a kid, and you train together now and stuff. There was the individual who, she makes a lot of the artwork and the signs. I think she drew a lot of those like dirty fairy tale books for you and things like that. Like, seeing that element was cool, but like a lot of that was you asking them what they thought of you and putting it on film. Like, how was that experience for you? I'm sure you see yourself, like, with all the jokes and things like that, you and even you have described on this podcast that you're like, yeah, I can be a bit of a dick and a bit difficult to work with, and some people just can't deal with that, and that's fine. Like, with that mentality, which I do respect, to be fair, is like, how was it asking people to talk about you to put on film? And was there any that were cut that were just like, nah, Gough's a dick, and you're like, you know what, I'm not keeping that one in there.
No, nothing was cut. Everything that people said is what people said. The one that surprised me the most is when Maddie, my makeup artist, said that I was chilled out. I'm like, I've never been described as chilled out before in my life. I think what she means by that was, because I trust Maddie, because she's very good at what she does, I just sort of leave her alone to do her job. There's no need to micromanage Maddie. She's fantastic. So I just tell her, these are your heads, this is what you're doing, bye, and she just does it. So I think that's what she means by chilled out. I'm not in a space interfering with her job. So I think that's what she meant by that. But no, everybody else was allowed to say whatever they wanted to say. They all knew that, because I would also spring it on them as well. So no one really knew that this was going to happen. So I would kind of spring it on them with about 2 minutes notice, but I did make it very clear to them that they had a choice. They didn't have to do it if they didn't want to, and they were allowed to say whatever they wanted to say. There were no rules. They could say whatever they want. And in the case of Ilya, for example, that does all my artwork, she's super cool, Ilya. And yeah, she said her piece about me and all of that sort of stuff, like in a nice way, obviously. But it was a funny little segment with Ilya. I thought it was probably one of my favorite segments of the whole thing, because she's a highly eccentric and wonderful lady. So that came across very nicely, I felt.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I love the behind the scenes stuff. Like, I know it was probably, like, work wise, when you were in the studio editing it with Scott, like, was it as much work as Reluctant Heroes? I assume not as much, because you don't have to get comedic timing, you don't have to hit the same beats. It's more, here's information, just make it coherent. So was that easier for you to make the behind the scenes thing?
Yeah, because I labeled everything, because I'm weird. So when
Organised.
I would do when I would do a clip, it would go into the computer, save clip 1, and then the next day clip 2, and the next day clip 3, and then I knew where there's little interruptions with other people. I'm like, okay, well, I've done about 10-13 clips in a row. There's been those segments. It's now time to stick this in. So all of that was organized in advance. So when we got to the studio with Scott, so I just sat with him and I'm like, all right, clip 1. Okay, there's nothing to add with that. Move on. Clip 2. Okay, we do have an insert for that in regards to, there's a piece of artwork or something on the screen that needs to be done. So include that. But yeah, so it was just pretty straightforward, because the clips just go in the order that they go in. So yeah.
So is that basically saying that you'll do this in the future because it wasn't that much work?
No, we're not doing it in the future.
Well, that's a shame, because I would love to see them. I'm still putting in my pitches for any behind the scenes stuff with you. I'm always so up for it, because I just think that Beernuts is its own little weird world that I know we've spoken about before. In my headcanon, your character is is the same person who just keeps finding themselves in these really bizarre situations and doesn't really know how to deal with it. And in certain ones, it's his life falling apart around him. And like, I think one of the prostitution ones, there was like this through line about his wife, I think, being a whore. And you're like, what is this? Who is this person? And for me, I'm just like, it's just one guy. And it's like, every one of these is like a few weeks or a couple of months of his life. And he's just flitting between these bizarre situations. But like, getting out of the Beernuts universe, being able to kind of see really how much work goes on behind the scenes. Like, obviously myself, I've got friends who make films, or I've had people on the podcast, so I think I probably know more than most who are not actively in the industry probably know. I'm probably in the borderline between everyone else and the professionals of loose knowledge of how difficult it is. But I just think the behind the scenes stuff really, really shows how good it is, how hard it is to make a film. And with someone like yourself, you know, obviously where you are blind, it's like, there's an extra layer to it. But in the behind the scenes things, even though you mention questions and you talk about your blindness and stuff, it's never really like oh, I'm blind, so I can't do it. It's like, well, I'm blind, so I can't do it this way, but I do it that way. So I personally love the behind the scenes stuff. So if you ever need if you need to do a Kickstarter for Beernuts Productions behind the scenes, or if you want a tier on Patreon and you want someone to pay you monthly to get behind the scenes videos, I'm there because I love them. And then in that question, anything for the future after your response?
Well, there's my IT man, Hassan, who you met very briefly in the film. He's a good guy, Hassan, and he like you is a big fan of all of this sort of stuff, and he's been hassling me for literally forever, like you have, to do this as well. So I assume that at some point I am planning actually in about a month. There'll be a little behind the scenes thing, but not of a film, of an experience I had through New Year's Eve. It'll just go for about 3 minutes, but it's quite funny. My New Year's Eve experience for 2023. People probably, I hope, find it rather humorous. I won't give too much away, but you'll see it pop up on my socials, so you'll have to keep an eye out for that, Mike. But yeah, so that's just a free little fun behind the scenes little thing to keep people like you and Hassan happy. But yeah, there will be more projects through 2024. We're hoping to film the next movie in early March. So sometime through March, the next film should be released, and then hopefully there will be another and another and another and another and another. So obviously, if people, like I say, I don't have the Patreon as yet, but there is the donation buttons. So if people do want to donate some money to help the cause, then I'll absolutely put that in the production account, and that goes towards all the good stuff. And obviously, if they go to beernutsproductions.com, they can download the actual films themselves, like Reluctant Heroes. So yes, there's a lot going on and coming up and happening in the world of Beernuts Productions. There's no doubt about that.
Incredible. Well, I know that our time in this scenario is slightly more limited than it usually is, but is there anything else you want to mention? I want to quickly say that I feel like the production quality for this film at least has gone up. Not that the production quality was ever bad or anything, but I just found like it felt like the cameras looked better and the audio was a bit better. I don't know if that's just me and I'm just misremembering Beernuts. Like, it's always been this way. It's been this way since before I met you, Mike. What are you talking about? Or if there was like a not noticeable jump in quality or anything. I mean, I'm not lost in the irony asking a blind gentleman about camera quality. The irony there's not lost on me. But I wondered if there was any improvement over the last year or so that you could mention. And then after that point, the final thoughts.
Not really. It's the same gear, so it's the same equipment that I've been using for the last. So when Simon retired, I hired Scott permanently because he was just my audio production, and I hired him permanently as my all-over production man. And he did have better cameras and whatnot. That Simon's stuff was on the way out, as Simon also was on the way out. So, but just because, I mean, the man was old and his equipment was old. But I mean, the quality was still good. Don't misunderstand. You go to the film, download the films. The quality's still very good. You can hear and see what everybody is saying and doing. But when I then got Scott involved, old, whatever the word is. It's very early. But when Scott became a part of the thing, he did have better equipment, so the quality is a little bit better. But that hasn't changed for the last few films. That said, because this film was easier to make in regards to there was usually only 2 voices at a time. It meant that you only have to really worry about 2 radio microphones. Whereas, for example, with Mr. Eligible, we had 19 voices, which is a lot different to try and control at one time. So it's a lot easier to do things when there's only 1 or 2 people involved at a time. So that's probably why it may appear to be a little smoother, just simply because there's not as much sort of going on, if that makes sense at all.
It does.
But yeah, the quality, the gear that we use has been the same for the last couple of years. So, and it's really good stuff. That's the other reason I like working with Scott. And before him, why I enjoyed working with Simon was because they actually own the gear themselves. So we don't have to worry about renting stuff or anything like that. They've got everything we need. Occasionally, we might have to go out and get a green screen or an extra something. But for the most part, everything that we need, we already have access to, which makes life super easy and really, really good. But yeah, final thoughts. Well, firstly, thank you for having me back on the podcast. That's very kind of you, Mike. And to encourage everybody to download Reluctant Heroes, Horse Race Commentators, Mr. Eligible, the film prior to that, and have a good laugh and a nice piece of entertainment, and support local independent filmmaking so that we can keep pumping out the hilarity.
Agreed. 100%. Backing up everything that Gough has said, the quality of all the prior Beernuts productions, at least that I have seen, are all fantastic. And I'm sure the rest of the quality is equally amazing as well. But I put links in the description to obviously the podcast, as well as the link to the YouTube documentary series as well as obviously Beernuts productions as always. And I'll keep an eye out for the New Year's Eve experience, because I'm very, very excited about that. And I will continue to have you on the show forever, unless you're mean to me and exclude me from intros of a behind the scenes thing again, shouting your praises. If that happens again, I might be like, you know what, I'll tell Gough that my dogs have his liver replaced, and it's a really peculiar situation for me, so I can't have him on. Aside from that,
I do have to make it clear, when it came to choosing people to be a part of the podcast, you weren't ignored for any specific reason. It's just I don't like you. No, that's a joke. That's purely a joke. The other guys that I've been on, I've done I do almost monthly to 3 monthly interviews with them. So and I've been on their podcast 30 times. Mm-hmm. So they know me intimately almost. So
I'm not there yet. I need to set you out on our 3rd date. We're only 2nd date material at the moment. That's joking aside.
Right, but I'm sure it will come. I'm sure it will happen. And also, I should also mention the Beernuts Productions podcast, as you point out, that's still going. We're just 91 episodes in, and there's another interesting one you may find of interest. I interviewed a woman called Tanya De Jong, who is all about psychedelic assisted therapy, which I'm not opposed to in the least. I think it's actually a very, very good therapeutic tool if done responsibly and correctly. I need to make that very clear. And people can make up their own mind as to whether Tanya is doing it responsibly or correctly. So that will be something people can make up their own mind about. But she was a very interesting interview, as, of course, all of my interviews are, of course. But yes, the Beernuts podcast, and I'm all over social. So Facebook, Instagram, whatever Twitter's called now, I don't know. So yes, just type in Beernuts Productions and I come out. And yes, again, thank you, Mike, for your kind support over the years. It is genuinely appreciated.
No worries at all. It's funny you mentioned Tanya De Jong, because of your most recent podcast, hers is the next one lined up for me to listen to. I listened to that Fiona Patton one. I was like, that's amazing. And then I I'm listening to a lot of other pods and audiobooks and etc. I was like, I need to get back into Beernuts. So I scrolled through. I've got a couple loaded in my queue. And when you mentioned the psychedelic one, I was like, I'm sure so I just double checked my library. So if anyone's questioning me, I'll take a screenshot and send it to them. But I've got that noted down because I was like, the psychedelic element, I've had someone on my show about psychedelics before. I find it very interesting. But in all honesty, I'm only pulling your leg because I know you can take it, Gough. If you do 1,000 behind the scenes things and you never have me on, I will genuinely never be offended by that. I mean, I know one of the hosts of the Dudes with Brews podcast was on, and I only know you through him. So he or they recommended, I don't know which of the hosts contacted me, but they said, we've been socially following each other for a little while, and they're like, oh, well, I've spoken to this blind chap called Gough. He's really, really cool. I feel like he'd probably fit genuine chit-chat if you're willing for me to, make contact. So in all honesty, with all those people, I was like, they all came before me. I only know Gough through Dudes of Brews on a Porch. So it's like, if I was on before them and you were still in contact with them, I would be pulling your leg for having me on instead of them. So there's no way you could have won, really, in this situation. I would take the piss anyway.
And you have been on the podcast, obviously. If people want to learn more about Mike Burton, he's been a guest on the Beernuts Productions podcast, talking all things Star Wars, which I have no idea about and still don't. So so you have been on the Beernuts Productions podcast, which is another reason why people should, of course, listen.
100%. Yeah, that's a good starting point. If you want to hear even more from me and you're not already subscribed, that's a good jumping off point. And then just listen to every podcast before then, and then every podcast after then. And then you'll be up to date. I mean, Gough releases loads of content. He has a film production company that also, actually a media production company, because you don't just make films, 29 films out, behind the scenes documentaries. The thing that kickstarted your career in some respects is the I Will Not Go Quietly documentary, audio books, fake interviews, you've got everything. It's nuts. The amount of stuff you put out there, pulling leg aside of saying I want some behind the scenes stuff. It's like, you're doing bloody everything. So if behind the scenes stuff doesn't come for a little while, I'm okay to wait because you have a lot of output. And it's always so much fun chatting with you. It's always so fun speaking to you and catching up as we do every year. And yeah, just thank you again for coming on the show, for releasing the content you do, and just being a funny guy. It's great.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Check out beernutsproductions.com for all your entertainment needs. Thank you so much, Gough.
Thanks, Mike.
And that's the end of the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, my friends, if you haven't watched the behind-the-scenes stuff that myself and Gough were talking so much about, go over to youtube.com/beernutsproductions just to check that out. It's all completely for free and it's really, really entertaining. So please check that out, as well as what I said in the intro, my appearance on Beernuts Productions, as well as Gough's numerous other appearances on this show. It's just a really great listen and it's always a delight to speak with Gough. But what have we got coming up? Well, this conversation was actually recorded about an hour before it was released on this feed. My intro/outro right now is being recorded within half an hour of the Zoom call I just had with Gough. So this is probably the quickest turnaround I've ever done in my life. But we've got lots of cool things coming up. I've got a recording for Clone Wars Conversations, the first season of the Clone Wars. We're going to try and do it in a slightly more structured format than Rebels Reviewed. Rebels Reviewed was kind of dipping our toes in, but Clone Wars Conversations, there are so many episodes to go in through that I'm going to try and make it a little bit more coherent, a little bit more structured in certain ways. But I will be recording that next week and should be releasing it on the Sunday as well. Then the week after that, I've got Mr. Tony Farina coming on the podcast. We don't actually have a plan of what we're going to talk about. I've got a couple of little notes here and there, but I really just wanted a good excuse to chat with Tony because I absolutely love him. One of my favourite people, Mr. Tony Farina. So I'm very, very excited to catch up and chat with him. I've then got a new guest due to be on the show to talk about some very interesting stuff, shall we say. So I'm going to wait until I've got that recording in the bag before I delve into those. In February, I've got a couple of recordings due. One of them is going to be with Scott Weatherly, the 20th Century Geek, because he's recently released a Moon Knight essay book, which he was editing. So I've taken it upon myself at the start of this year to read as much Moon Knight as possible, which is another contributing reason as to why I've wound down the Star Wars Comics and Canon podcast a little bit. Not because I don't love Star Wars Comics and Canon, but I'm trying to read things that aren't just all Star Wars content. And it's very hard to not do that when you have to release an episode every single week of Star Wars comics and stuff, which require you reading 4 to 6 comics a week, writing notes on them, editing, etc., etc. So part of these new wave of podcasts that I'm going to be doing over the year, I'm going to try and get myself a bit more well-read. I'm going to read a few more comics and stuff, so hopefully I'll make an appearance on Indie Comic Spotlight at this time at some point this year. In addition to that, I'm going to be reading more books. Hopefully I'll be able to appear on Tonya Todd's Banned Books Conversations. I'm going to try and put myself out there to do a few more guest spots. Try and do that because I love being on other people's podcasts and stuff. It's just that I've been so busy with all my other stuff, I haven't really had the time. Or at least that's what I say. That's a nice, good excuse. But lots of cool stuff. There's going to be a lot of familiar faces this year because I want to get more into the conversations that I really specifically want to have, just to waffle and to go off on random tangents. Tangents are welcomed on this show, and I found with a lot of the conversations I've been having, although very, very interesting, haven't been that many tangents. So I'm going to try and utilize that, go back to my roots in air quotes. I mean, I've been doing this for like 6 years. Isn't that normally what people do when they've been doing something for that long? It's like a rebrand of a company. They make like a really simplistic logo, or they use the logo they used when the company was founded like decades prior. Or just when you've made a film franchise and you've made several installments and then you call the newest one just the same name as the first one, but with the in front of it. Is that how this year's going to go? Who knows? Obviously, I'm getting married in August, so forewarning that in August it'll be a bit of a dry spell, but I will be aiming to release content on this feed then. It'll probably just be a few bonus bits and pieces here, but I will be out of action for the whole month of August. So yeah, Megan will be moving from my fiance. She's being promoted to my wife later on this year, and I'm obviously being promoted from fiance to husband. So lots of exciting stuff going on in 2024 for me, but I'm still going to be releasing podcast content for you. There'll be monthly Clone Wars conversations as well as a few other bits and pieces too. But it's very, very exciting. I'm just very, very thrilled to be doing this for another several years. I mean, I'm 6.5 years down at this point, so let's go for 10. If I can do this for 10 years, then I feel like that would be an amazing achievement, and hopefully beyond that. But we shall see. But friends, you can support me by going to Genuine Chit-Chat on any of the social media platforms, liking, sharing, telling your friends about it. You can also go to patreon.com/Genuine Chit-Chat, and for as little as £1 a month, you get immediate access to over 200 episodes of Afterthoughts. You get at least 10 minutes every single week, but it's really more like 20 minutes a week plus extra bonus stuff as well on there. Myself and Megan review a bunch of things, mainly TV shows, movies and stuff like that. I recently recorded a review of Poor Things that I saw with my buddy Alex at the cinema, so that's good fun there. That's about 20 minutes long, I think, or 15 minutes. So I've got lots of other cool things as well. Myself and Megan recently reviewed The Crown and lots of other cool films, and we're taking in more Patreon suggestions. I know that Brett Scott has recently submitted A Place Beneath the Pines with Ryan Gosling, so I will be watching that at some point. So if you want to get involved in Patreon, you want to connect with me in a certain way, you want to see future guest lists that I put on there occasionally, you want to get some bonus content, you want to get some early access stuff, please consider supporting the show, because it really, really helps me out. And with the money that I'm making from this one, I'm going to be improving my camera, so people on YouTube will appreciate that greatly. But I think that's going to be enough from me, my friends. Just like, share, leave reviews and stuff. Anyone who leaves reviews on Apple Podcasts or anything like that, even give me a rating on Spotify. If you do that, send me a screenshot. I'll send you a free episode of Afterthoughts. No problem at all. But it really helps the show out, sharing, rating, reviewing, and subscribing and all that jazz. And so please do that, as well as checking back all the other episodes I have done if you are new to the show. But friends, it's been a good start to 2024 so far. I've got lots of cool things to come. And just keep subscribed, keep informed, keep updated with everything I'm up to. And please make contact and chat with me if you so desire. But friends, I appreciate each and every one of you listening, especially all the way up to the very end, and I'll speak to you next week, likely with Clone Wars Conversations Season 1.
You have just experienced host, creator, everything elser of Genuine Chit-Chat, and also the host and creator of Star Wars Comics and Canon, found on the Comics in Motion podcast, Mike Burton.